Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar, Doing Business with Jamaica, Strategies to Win in 2015, brought to you by ConnectAmericas.com and Global News Matters. First of all, I would like to thank Melissa Merchant, CEO of Global News Matters, for her collaboration and outstanding work in producing this webinar. She will be your moderator and will introduce our guest speakers. Global News Matters is a dynamic news and business information outlet specializing in comprehensive regional research and market analysis. Global News Matters is a key partner of ConnectAmericas.com in the Caribbean region. ConnectAmericas is an online platform developed by the IDB with the support of Google, DHL, Visa, and Alibaba. ConnectAmericas is designed to help small and medium-sized enterprises in Latin America and the Caribbean to grow their businesses internationally. Through ConnectAmericas, users can connect with potential partners, suppliers, and new business opportunities, find courses and content that will help them learn about the practical aspects of international trade, and access relevant information about financing. As part of the ConnectAmericas learning tools, we are offering these free webinars. Our aim is to convey practical and useful information of interest to the SMEs and entrepreneurs in the region. The topics we will cover range from international logistics and customs to e-commerce, digital marketing for SMEs, doing business in new markets, and much more. So please stay updated with the latest news on ConnectAmericas.com and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We will soon be sharing information about our next webinar in this series. So now, I would like to turn the floor over to Melissa Merchant, CEO of Global News Matters. Melissa?
Alejandra, thank you. And the team at Global News Matters would like to thank all of those connected today for joining us. I'm just going to get the presentation up here. Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. The team is really excited to have this opportunity to present you with this webinar today, Doing Business with Jamaica, Strategies to Win in 2015. GNM has had the privilege of accompanying the world's top organizations in their growth in the Caribbean, and it's truly a pleasure today to bring you and your company access to the insights that will really make a difference in your success. There's been a lot of buzz on the markets recently about Jamaica. Jamaica took a major jump in the Doing Business ranking last year, from 94th to 58th. There's been a migration of technology initiatives towards Jamaica, and we've seen considerable innovation coming from the market across many sectors. Even Barack Obama is in Jamaica today and tomorrow, so there's clearly a lot of excitement building about Jamaica. In today's session, you'll learn both why Jamaica and how to get into the market. Today, we will give you the tools so that you can build your own good judgment about doing business with Jamaica. We have a great session lined up for you, and I want to get right into the insights. So I'd like to present you with today's panelists. We're going to start off today hearing from Jason Morris. Jason is Vice President of Business Analytics, Portfolio Advisory, and Product Development at Scotia Investments Jamaica. Jason is not only one of the best analysts I have had the pleasure to work with, but also a specialist on the Jamaica market. He's going to kick off the discussion today talking to us about what is happening in Jamaica and what can we expect going forward. Secondly, we will hear from Becky Stockhausen. Becky is the Executive Director of AmCham Jamaica, which has allowed her to work very closely with foreign companies working with and in Jamaica. Becky is going to tell us from a commercial standpoint what makes this a good time to be doing business with Jamaica. Becky will also be giving us some insights on why Jamaica is a great place for women to do business. Our final panelist will really connect the dots for us on how to tap into the opportunities in Jamaica. Mr. Claude Duncan, Vice President of Jamaica's Trade and Investment Promotion Agency, JAMPRO. We'll key in on trade opportunities in the market and the types of investments that will find success in Jamaica. And through Claude's presentation, you will get your next steps on how to advance your plans in Jamaica. If there are any questions that you have during the presentations that you would like to direct to one specific panelist, feel free to write the panelist's name in parentheses when you send us the question. Now I'm going to hand it over to Jason to begin the panel discussion. Jason.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Morning, everyone. Morning to fellow panelists. I will briefly take you through what's happening in Jamaica now and what I think the next couple of years hold. Okay, next. So first, let me start off by outlining the fact that Jamaica is currently going through a 4-year IMF deal with support of almost $1 billion USD for balance of payment support. Next. Next. And this is part of a $2 billion US funding package between the World Bank and the IDB, both of whom are contributing roughly $500 million each. Next. So what are the main objectives of this program? Well, first of all, Jamaica had two significant problems, two in deficit, so to speak. One had to do with its stock of debt, which is one of the highest in the world, and the other was that we had a large current account deficit. So essentially, the IMF program was to correct these two challenges, and I'll explain how Jamaica has progressed so far. So in terms of the major objectives of the IMF program, you can see the 6 major objectives on the screen: sustainable debt reduction, improving competitiveness, structural reforms to enhance growth and employment, improve social protection programs, to ensure that the policies that are being implemented are fairly shared, and also to bring policy credibility to the government's program, and finally, to make significant fiscal adjustments and extensive fiscal reforms. And a lot of these adjustments have to be made up front. Next. So next I will look at how we have performed. In terms of the balance, in terms of Jamaica's budget balance, if you look on the screen, and I have a pointer that I want to walk you through, we can see where Jamaica's government balance, or the budget balance, widened out significantly in 2010, 2011, where the budget deficit was almost 12% of GDP, which is very, very large. And that forced us to enter the first IMF program, which resulted in a debt swap called the Jamaica Debt Exchange in that period. And we had to enter a second debt swap in 2013 and a second IMF program. But you can see that moving from 2010 through to where we are today, Jamaica actually generated its first balanced budget of 0.1% of GDP in 18 years. So that's one of the huge benefits from the IMF program. For the fiscal year ended March, just completed in March, we would have generated a very small deficit of about 0.4% of GDP. And going forward, over the next 2 years, we anticipate for next year a small deficit of less than 0.5% of GDP, and then small budget surpluses. Next. Now, why is it that why do we have to actually try to balance the budget? Not only is having a large budget deficit a bad thing, but if you look at the stock of Jamaica's debt, which is what we are now showing on the screen, you can see that following the global credit crunch in 2008, here, the debt to GDP ratio of Jamaica increased, and it peaked at around 146.5% in 2012-2013. Which forced us to go into a second debt swap. So to reduce that very large debt overhang, Jamaica has to run one of the highest primary balances in the world. because the alternative to running a high primary balance is to actually default, have an outright default on the debt, which we didn't want to do at that time, and felt that the way to go about reducing our debt stock is to run a high primary surplus to bring the debt stock down. So you can see that since we started the second IMF program in 2013, the debt to GDP ratio has been reduced, and we expect that it will be reduced further over the next 4 to 5 years towards a target of below 100% over the next 10 years. So it's key to understand that Jamaica requires a very high primary balance in order to get the debt down, otherwise default risk will rise. But then an interesting development, Jamaica is part of the Petro-Caribbean Agreement, where we have roughly 22% of GDP in Petro-Caribbean debt. So one of the ways in which Jamaica could get more fiscal room to operate this year, for argument's sake, is to sell that Petro-Caribbean debt. And this would actually lower the debt to GDP ratio by between 9 and 10%. By lowering the debt to GDP ratio, this automatically means that the primary balance that Jamaica is required to generate would be a lot lower than the 7.5%, or it could be maybe 7%. So we could save up to 0.5% or between 0.5% and a percentage point on the primary balance. What this would allow Jamaica to do is to expand its capital expenditure program, so would allow us to spend more, which could help to stimulate growth near term. Next. Now the key indicator for the performance of Jamaica's budget, and we have had 7 consecutive IMF tests that we have passed over the past 2 years, so we are performing very well under the program. However, there are some challenges still remain, and one of those challenges has to do with tax revenues. Now, tax revenues comprise 90% of the total revenue intake by the government. So the performance of tax revenue is key to the budget process as well as to passing the IMF test. So if you look at the screen in terms of the 12-month change in tax revenues, you recognize that following the global credit crunch here, tax revenues fell off, went through the first IMF test, and then as tax revenues fell to its lowest level in 20 years in September 2012, we had to pretty much enter a second IMF agreement. Now, if you look to the right of the screen, you recognize that the current performance of tax revenues is 7.3% as at the end of February 2015. So that's the latest data that we have. But the budget for the fiscal year was 9.9% in terms of what the government expects to collect. So we have a gap. And therefore, what has happened is that the government has been forced to cut capital expenditures, or cut expenditures in general, to actually meet the primary balance target at 7.5% of GDP. So a new budget was announced in last quarter, and that budget is projecting a 9% growth in tax revenues. Again, you can see that the recent performance for us is 7.3%. So to get 9%, we have a gap, and we would have a gap going forward in terms of credibility. So what the government has done is that in announcing that new budget, they announced measures of amounting to 0.7% of GDP in terms of new tax measures. And they also announced a large compliance program to actually get revenues in by widening the tax base in terms of those who are not paying their fair share. So the budget target for this fiscal year will be challenging, but the government can achieve them if they continue to execute flawlessly as they have done over the last 7 IMF tests. Next. Now, a key issue here is that while we have performed very well under the IMF program, we actually are on track with 31 structural reforms for Jamaica, spanning a wide range of areas including tax reform, fiscal reform, ease of doing business reforms, labor reforms, etc. And we are actually top in the Caribbean in terms of the 2015 World Bank ease of doing business report. However, there's a lot of room for improvement still. So in terms of growth enhancing reforms to get growth faster over the near term, the government has embarked upon a number of initiatives. for this fiscal year, and those include improving the business climate. And in terms of initiatives on improving the business climate, we're speaking about a system to track government approvals for construction permits, and we expect that to start by June 2015. A development application process, which has a 2-year timeline for implementation, and this is expected to start in June 2015, where certain thresholds will be handled by a joint technical team in terms of trying to increase or to quicken the pace and streamline the process for the application for persons who are making applications to get those approvals in faster. We also have a program that is looking at land titling to increase the number of persons who can get access to land titles. We have an insolvency act that went into operation last quarter, and now we are looking to execute that those activities in this quarter. Also, an online system for business registration, which is scheduled to come on stream in August 2015, to make it easier for entrepreneurs to actually get electricity connections. You also have what you call special economic zones, where a Special Economic Zone Act is expected to come into operation as of October 2015, where other regulations that will govern the special economic zones for investors who are coming from outside and also within the economy. They know what the regulation is, what that framework is, and what are the incentives that will be within that framework. In terms of strategic investments, Jamaica is embarking on a logistics hub initiative, and there are a number of activities that have already started in terms of trying to privatize one of our airports, also privatization of the Kingston container terminal, and yesterday the government was able to sign an agreement with an investor valued at around $510 million USD, and I'll explain that a little bit more. As far as reducing the cost of electricity, Jamaica has embarked on a program to reduce oil field generation capacity and replace that with gas and coal to reduce the expensive cost of electricity for Jamaica. And finally, on labor market reform to try and reduce the separation costs as well as to improve productivity in the labor market. Tax reforms also is a big issue for Jamaica, and there are a number of issues that Jamaica has embarked there, including widening the tax base and implementing more progressive taxes, as well as embarking on a tax compliance framework to try and get more people inside the tax net. Next. Now, a key part of Jamaica's growth plan over the next couple of years will be timely execution of what it calls strategic investments. And what I'm showing on the screen there are what my best guess is as to what are the major initiatives that will transform Jamaica from, which has been structured as an economy that has been focused on domestic demand for the past couple of decades, to focusing on external demand. So we want to be focused upon generating growth over the long term in a sustainable way by looking to generate external demand. So I spoke about energy. So in terms of the energy plan, we are implementing roughly 460 megawatts of additional capacity over the next 2 years, both in coal and gas, as well as renewables. We are actually almost doubling our renewables from 6% of the grid to 11% of the grid. And we may have another power plant coming on stream over the medium term, which is likely to be coal for the transshipment hub that the Chinese will be implementing in Jamaica over the short to medium term. As far as integrated resorts are concerned, integrated resorts reflect large hotels with casino gaming license. We have a casino gaming app that is being implemented, which is looking at having 3 licenses and joining that with hotels with a minimum of 2,000 rooms. And each of these investments, if we were to get 3, would be 1.5 billion each. That's the expectation. Jamaica is also focused heavily on the agricultural sector, and we are doing so via agro-parks, and these are large-scale farms that will be focused on import substitutions, because Jamaica has a massive food import bill in excess of $1 billion USD. So we're trying to do import substitution by producing some of that food stuff here and therefore reduce the need to actually import that. The other parks will also focus upon generating exports to generate foreign exchange for the country. In terms of the logistics hub initiative, this has a number of components. We have the China Harbor Engineering Company Logistics Park, which is estimated to be a $1.5 billion investment. We are currently in the testing phase, and we expect that the first phase of this will be implemented by Q4 of 2016. We also will be looking at port facilities and air cargo facilities as part of the overall logistics hub initiative. The government has indicated that it has signed an MOU of $5 billion USD with an investor. We're not sure whether or not the investment is in relation to the port facility or the air cargo facility, but certainly that we'll get some more information on that in coming months. And I already spoke about the special economic zones, and these economic zones will be focused on light manufacturing activity, assembling, distribution, etc. And we expect that that could come on stream or start by legislation certainly by the beginning of 2016. Finally, Jamaica is embarking on infrastructure development, where we are focusing on developing the country's ports, airports, and roads. We have 4 major initiatives under this. The Major Infrastructure Development Program, which is focused on road infrastructure, $350 million, and that's already in train and should be finished by next year. We have the North-South Highway Link, which is a road infrastructure program as well, investment of $610 million USD, and that's on track to be finished by next year. And I spoke about the Kingston Container Terminal in terms of its privatization, which yesterday an agreement was signed for $510 million USD. So that's on track. Next. Now what I want to get into is to look at the general macro environment. As far as employment trends go, the unemployment rate remains at an undesirable level in double digits. However, what I'm showing you on the screen is the 12-month change or the 4-quarter change in the number of jobs. So this would essentially tell you that if we are positive, we are generating jobs. If we are negative, we are losing jobs. So you can see that during the global credit crunch, we actually lost a number of jobs, almost 183,000 during the worst of the period. But since then, we have actually improved, and over the last 4 quarters, with the latest report at the end of October last year, we generated 76,500 jobs, net change. Next. In terms of inflation, inflation is low all over the world, and Jamaica is no exception. Inflation has fallen to its lowest level in almost 4 decades, and we expect that for 2015, inflation will trend between 5 and 7%, and the central bank has a target to keep inflation no higher than 6% over the medium term. Next. Now, looking at the exchange rate and the balance of payments trend, what we have on the chart on the screen is the 12-month change in the rate of depreciation or the movement in exchange rate. So here we had an exchange rate crisis in 2002-03, and the exchange rate topped out at 23% depreciation. Normalization returned up through to 2007. Then we had a global credit crunch, where we had another crisis, 25% depreciation. And the third in the series, where we peaked at 15.2% in October 2013. But since that time, the exchange rate the rate of depreciation has been decelerating consistently to the stage where at the end of March this year, the level of depreciation was 5%. Next. Now, this chart is showing the real effective exchange rate, which is what is very important for persons and for the country, since we want to focus on external demand. So, at points above the black horizontal line, it means that the exchange rate is overvalued in terms of the Jamaican dollar versus the USD. And below it, you're undervalued. So we can see if you that here during the global credit crunch, the exchange rate was actually highly overvalued by more than 12%, and therefore the nominal exchange rate needed to depreciate. But following that, we saw where the exchange rate overvaluation was the highest in May 2012, and that is what triggered that 15.2% depreciation in the nominal rate that I showed in the previous slide. So the takeaway from here is that the overvaluation of the Jamaican currency has subsided substantially over the last 18 months. And our model shows us that the exchange rate in terms of level of overvaluation was no more than 6.2% as at the end of February. Now, this does not mean that the currency needs to depreciate by 6.2% going forward, per se. The takeaway here is that the overvaluation has subsided, and therefore the need for the nominal exchange rate to depreciate by rapidly has been reduced significantly. Next. Now, in a previous slide, I explained to you that the primary balance is the major means by which Jamaica reduces the debt stock. So by having a higher primary balance, you will reduce your debt stock. Well, the real exchange rate is to the current account as the primary balance is to the debt. So the reduction of the overvaluation or the reduction in the real exchange rate actually is what causes your current account deficit to shrink. So if you were to go back and look at the previous chart and superimpose it on the current account deficit, you recognize that once the real exchange rate depreciates, then the current account deficit shrinks. So you can see in 2008, we had a massive deficit of 20.4%, which is a current account crisis. And then we had a depreciation of the real exchange rate, and so our current account deficit subsided. Then the overvaluation that occurred in 2012, and since that time, the depreciation of the real exchange rate has resulted in an improvement in the current account deficit to the extent where for this year we are projecting that the current account deficit could be its lowest in a decade and a half, which is a significant milestone for Jamaica. Next. There are a number of things that have contributed also to the current account deficit shrinking. If you look at foreign direct investment flows, prior to the global credit crunch, we were averaging roughly 700 million USD. 2008, that's a one-off in terms of the significant FDI flows there. That's because of a transaction that occurred between CL Financial and ourselves in terms of sale of an asset. But post that period, you can see that during the global credit crunch, Jamaica was significantly affected, where FDI flows fell to decade lows of 220 million in 2011. Since that time, though, FDI flows have actually tripled, more than tripled. We estimate that at the end of 2014, we would have had roughly 700 million USD in foreign direct investment flows. So that repair to the foreign direct investments has helped our balance of payments, which has also translated into a slowdown in the depreciation of the nominal exchange rate. Next. Remittances, same story. Global credit crunch, we had a problem, but since that time, remittances have improved with the advancement in the US economy and the British economy. And at the end of December 2014, our remittances were at a record 2.19 billion. Next. Net international reserve, same story here. During the first IMF agreement, the NIR was bolstered to a record 2.6 billion. Following that, in 2012-2013, the NIR was actually below a billion USD. But since that time, with Jamaica's fiscal prudence, the NIR has been rebuilt under the second IMF program, where we were able to issue 800 million USD bond last July, and our NIR is currently trending at 1.9 billion. The government is expected to tap the global markets within the next month or two to raise additional financing, and therefore the net international reserves could remain buoyant for the remainder of 2014. Next. In terms of interest rates and credit, the first debt swap, the Jamaica debt exchange, pushed interest rates significantly down. and the second debt exchange pushed them down to record lows in February 2013. However, because of the structure of the IMF program, which forced the central bank to essentially have to meet certain NIR targets at the end of each quarter, the central bank had to be in the market to purchase foreign currency, which pushed local rates higher. And so liquidity conditions in the local Jamaican dollar market was very tight. But following the $800 million bond issuance last July, the central bank no longer has any need to be in the market to be buying up foreign currency and therefore restricting liquidity. So we are seeing a situation where liquidity conditions have been improving significantly, gradually since July of last year. We expect that these conditions should continue. One thing here though is that the bonds from the National Debt Exchange are not trading as much as the market would want, so that's something that we need to work on over the coming year and months. Next. One of the challenges for Jamaica is because of the strictures of the IMF program in terms of government spending and the combination of the low liquidity levels on the Jamaican side, we can see where credit to the private sector, which rebounded following the global credit crunch through to 2012, has been constrained or has been decelerating. And at the end of December last year, the rate was 5.5%. And if you were to compare that with inflation, you can see that the real credit has actually is almost negative. So that's something that we need to improve on going forward. However, looking at the first quarter, even though we don't have data yet, we know that the latest business and consumer confidence information has pointed to a 2-year high for both of those indices. And improvement in the Jamaican dollar liquidity that I've showed you should result in a recovery in credit growth, certainly during 2015, as well as the execution of some of those projects which are scheduled to start this year. Next. In terms of growth, same story. Global credit crunch, growth fell off a cliff. Since that time, we have rebounded. And last year, we were doing between 1% and 2%, and then we were affected by drought conditions in the agricultural sector, as well as chikungunya virus, and that impacted the agricultural sector significantly. However, we see a situation where drought conditions have improved substantially, and so we expect that for 2015, growth should recover to between 1.5 and 2.5%. We also have a situation where hotels and restaurants, which captures tourism, has been doing very well. In the last quarter, of 2014, we had 5.6% expansion of the hotels and restaurant sector, and we expect that based on the arrival flow, that we should see a continuation of that strength for 2015. We also expect mining and quarrying could improve in 2015, as some of our mines which have remained closed for the past 4 or 5 years are scheduled to reopen or restart activities. And on the manufacturing side, the plant was closed during the 3rd quarter of last year, so we expect that with the reopening, we should see increased manufacturing activity for this quarter and into 2015. Next. So what has this meant for Jamaica? If you look at Jamaica's credit rating, the reduction of the current account deficit, as well as the management of our fiscal deficit, which are translated into a gradual trending down into the debt to GDP ratio, has meant that Jamaica's credit rating has improved in terms of the credit spreads that are the premium that investors charge to hold government of Jamaican bonds. So following the second IMF program, you can see where credit spreads were above 700 basis points, and they are now at their lowest level, which are the lowest level pre the 2008 global credit crunch. In addition to the fact that global investors are looking for high yields, they are certainly looking at Jamaica as one of those improving credit stories. Next. So the last slide is pretty much a summary of everything that I've said so far. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jason. Great insights. And I'm going to pass the microphone over to Becky now. For those that have just joined us, just wanted to let you know who's next in line. We're going to be hearing from Becky. As I mentioned, Becky is the Executive Director of AmChem Jamaica and has worked extensively in trade and with investors from around the world in Jamaica. And so we really want to listen closely for what is our next step to getting into Jamaica, and why is this a great time for us to be a first mover in the Jamaica market? So I'm going to go ahead and hand the mic over to Becky. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to have this opportunity to speak to you today. I'm sure that you will have picked up that I have an American accent, so right away I'm going to answer a question that everybody asks. How did I get to Jamaica? I'm originally from Akron, Ohio. I met a Jamaican man 34 years ago who hired me in the U.S., then married me and brought me to Jamaica. So my life has taken a very unusual direction, and it's one that I am so happy about because I absolutely love Jamaica. I have been working with the American Chamber of Commerce of Jamaica for over 20 years. We have 200 member companies in our chamber, which is made up of U.S. companies, Jamaican companies, and multinationals. And for reasons that I think you will discover during my presentation, I've earned a reputation for being Jamaica's cheerleader, and I'm happy to have this opportunity today to tell you why. Why now is a great time to do business with Jamaica, and a few of the things I'm going to mention have been mentioned briefly by Jason. First of all, you heard about the IMF facility that we're granted, and that is really targeted at facilitating economic growth, reducing the debts, and creating the conditions for growth and resilience in the Jamaican company. And in support of that package, as Jason alluded to, the World Bank and the IDB, who continue to have confidence in Jamaica and demonstrate that confidence in a variety of ways, believe in Jamaica's potential for growth. And also, Jamaica has, Jason just said, Jamaica has passed 7 consecutive tests under the agreement. And that has been such a pleasant surprise for so many of us. The Minister of Finance is doing a terrific job, and we're very proud of that. And I think that encouragement, or that milestone, was one of the reasons why the president of the IMF, Ms. Christine Lagarde, visited Jamaica a few months ago to offer encouragement, and I think it also may be a factor in President Obama's visit to Jamaica to express their support and encouragement in this regard. But those of us in Jamaica are especially proud of a number of other examples that Jamaica is on the right track now for economic growth. Jamaica recently jumped 27 places in the World Bank's 2015 Doing Business ranking to 58 out of 189 countries. The 2014 Forbes Best Countries Business Report ranked Jamaica 64 out of 146 countries, making it the best country in the Caribbean region to do business, and further making it 3rd place in the Latin America and Caribbean region. So Jamaica is doing a lot of good things that are being recognized by others. And finally, Jamaica moved up 8 places in the Global Competitiveness Index and is now ranked 86 out of 144 countries. But it's not only international confidence that we need and what we have, and there have been a couple of things that have happened recently that I'd like you to know about the local business community. Jamaica, in a survey conducted recently by the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce in conjunction with the University of Michigan Research Center, December 2014, shows vast improvement in both business and consumer confidence in Jamaica when each of these indices moved upwards at the same time, with a majority of the firms in Jamaica expressing willingness to invest and reinvest. And as the Jamaica Observer report of January 21st, it's showing local business confidence has soared to the highest rating in 13 years, and that's very, very important. The Gleaner editorial of April 6, 2015 proclaimed, Barack Obama's stopover, a welcome match for investment, will say to potential investors that Jamaica is open for business, the rule of law works, and it has a functioning economy. So we're very happy about all of these votes of confidence and recognition of what Jamaica is trying to do. What sets Jamaica apart from other business and investment destinations? And we have a lot of things that we have going for us. Jamaica is the largest English-speaking population in the Caribbean region. The investors who come to Jamaica find a highly educated workforce, as is borne out by many of the investors in recent years. Jamaica's proximity to the U.S. is perfect. Only an hour and a half from Miami, 3.5 hours from New York, which is very important. We have 2 international airports, Kingston and Montego Bay. And the workforce here understands the American culture, which is very important, especially in the ICT BPO industry, because then the call centers in Jamaica who take calls from America, they understand the American culture, which is very important and isn't the case in other countries. We have the same time zone with the East Coast of the United States, except during daylight savings time. We have a first world highway system that's being constructed island-wide and already is reducing driving time between Mo Bay and Kingston a significant amount. And Jamaica is also making headway in rapidly bridging the gap on the digital divide. You may find it surprising that almost everybody in Jamaica has not one cell phone, but has 2 and sometimes 3, and they're very, very au fait with the internet and technology. And finally, we're a highly entrepreneurial society, which means that both local and foreign investors will do well in Jamaica if they have an entrepreneurial idea or something that they would like to consider for Jamaica. Next. Right. I'm really happy to also speak about, and I think it's an interesting question that came to me, is what is it like and why is Jamaica a great place for women? I'd like to say that women are highly valued in the Jamaican culture, which is evidenced in both government, diplomacy, and business. And just to show you some examples of that, is that key positions in the government of Jamaica are led by women, including our Prime Minister, 3 other female ministers in the cabinet. And the Jamaican government often posts as Jamaican ambassadors and to other diplomatic posts worldwide many women. Even one of the most important postings, which is in Britain, we have a woman who is the High Commissioner there. And just a few years ago, the first female president of the American Chamber of Commerce was then appointed by the then government as Jamaica's first female ambassador to the United States. Another interesting fact is that the commanding officer of the JDF Coast Guard is a woman, as well as the president of JAMPRO, which is the government's promotional arm. As it comes to corporate ladders, we have several women in top corporate positions. For instance, the president and CEO of Scotiabank is a woman. So is the president of First Global Bank. The president of Jamaica Public Service happens to be an American woman. We have a CEO of the Jamaica Stock Exchange who's a woman. A president of the Jamaica Exporters Association is a woman, and the country manager of Ernst & Young. And I want to just say that we've had 4 perfect examples of what women can do and achieve in Jamaica. We have Celia Lynn, who is a woman who started into the fast food business years ago, and is now has chain stores all over the island, but also in Barbados and other parts of the Caribbean. Ambassador Audrey Marks, who was the first ambassador, female ambassador to the U.S., began Paymaster, which was the first multi-payment system. It's also in place overseas. Audrey Hinchcliffe of the Maintenance and Manpower Company has branched out in other Caribbean countries, and Diana Stewart, the Managing Director of Stewart's Automotive Group. So what I wanted to say to you is that Jamaican women are, and foreigners are, valued in Jamaica. They're given a lot of respect. And in addition to all of that, Jamaica is a part of the Women's Entrepreneurial Network chapter, which was established by Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's Global Business Conference in 2012. We also have a Women Business Owners Association. We have a Women's International Forum chapter. Jamaica has a Branson Center of Entrepreneurship, Caribbean, launched in Jamaica with special interest in assisting female entrepreneurs. And you may realize that it's Richard Branson of Virgin Atlantic who is, has started that wonderful organization. But most importantly, and it does not apply just to women, Jamaicans, there is a warmth of the Jamaican people. They know how to live. They welcome foreigners. They don't really care where you come from. Jamaicans welcome foreigners to Jamaica. And it's this Jamaican warmth that is why so many of us come to Jamaica and never leave. And I love the ad on television in the U.S. that often says, when you go, you know. And for all of you who are even considering doing business or investing in Jamaica, I can assure you that you will make friends, you will be welcomed, and you will find it to be a great place to live. But that also goes for the men as well. Next. Jamaica currently enjoys being one of the top destination spots for recreational tourism, thanks to both ongoing local and foreign investments. Locally, the Jewel Hotel chain, which is a local company, keeps reinvesting for hotels, and they recently penned an agreement with the Hilton Curio Collection, which is the first in the Caribbean. Recently, Hyatt entered into Jamaica's tourism market with 2 hotels. And what's interesting is that these hotels are their first entry into the all-inclusive hotel venture. So that's quite an accomplishment. They would try Jamaica as their first location as an all-inclusive resort. Melia Hotels is about to construct 2 new hotels and more. However, there are still many untapped sources of tourism growth, such as medical tourism and sports tourism, which I want to speak to you a bit about. Medical tourism, of course, would include plastic surgery, orthopedic surgery. It gives you an opportunity to have a great vacation in Jamaica. Come and have some of your medical surgeries taken care of while your family gets to enjoy a Jamaican vacation. There's also something that could be put together in Jamaica and could be important, is the forming of a drug habilitation facility in Jamaica, as is in the case when the musician Eric Clapton built a drug habilitation center in Antigua. You could have care of the elderly and so much more. It is estimated that Jamaica could attract some 15,000 medical and residential care patients annually, creating an annual income in excess of $125 million US in 5 years. And very importantly, Jamaica was just ranked 2nd as the most attractive destination for medical tourism in the 2014 Medical Tourism Index. Another exciting thing that I'm very interested in is sports tourism. I'm sure you're aware that in America they have baseball practices. They have American football, soccer, basketball clinics that they go to hone their athletic abilities. And we have in Jamaica what would be a great drawing card, because we have the world-renowned track and field prowess via the success of Usain Bolt, Shelley Ann Fraser, and so many others. And we feel that we have a great stadium on the north coast of Jamaica that could be used for those sports. We could attract teenagers from the States who want to excel in sports. So it could be such an exciting thing for Jamaica. And importantly, sports tourism is recognized globally as the fastest growing sector in the tourism industry, which now generates $600 billion US, or 10% of the international tourism market. So that is very important. Now, as far as trade goes, I really wanted to speak to you most today because we're involved in a very exciting initiative. As you may know, American Chambers of Commerce in Jamaica is one of 118 chambers worldwide. And we're associated with the U.S. Chamber in Washington, and on a regional level with the 28 AmChams in Latin America and the Caribbean. And I wanted to point out here that if you do business in Jamaica or want to invest, the American Chamber of Commerce can always be there to help you and guide you in the process. About a year and a half ago, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce came to AmCham Jamaica with an idea that they thought could be a great way of boosting Jamaica's economic development. The Caribbean Basin Trade Initiative, which was established many years ago, and it addressed issues of Jamaica, the Caribbean being able to export their goods to the United States with tax benefits and easier entries and that sort of thing. Well, today in the Caribbean, the services sectors are 70% of the GDP of the Caribbean countries. And just think if we were able to get this bill past the U.S. Congress for extension of that initiative to include the services sector, we feel it could have a significant impact on not only Jamaica's economic situation, but also the Caribbean. I'm happy to say that AmCham Jamaica and AmCham Trinidad are now serving as co-chairs of a movement which has been named the Services of the Caribbean SOCA Initiative, which we thought was kind of cute because of SOCA and Trinidad and Jamaica, with the goal of lobbying the U.S. Congress to do what many trade agreements are doing already and or being negotiated by countries around the world, for a region in the Caribbean that is unlikely to gain access to free trade agreements on the horizon. The sectors that we feel could benefit most from this initiative include finance and insurance, education and training, including medical and nursing training, sports fitnesses, ICT BPO sectors, energy services, logistics and transportation, entertainment industries, advertising, professional service. Our coalition has had 2 lobbying missions to Washington, where we met with many of the important officials in Washington. And we have gotten nothing but positive encouragement on this. As many people are beginning to feel in America, and we've heard this from the U.S. Chamber, that it is time that the U.S. pay a little attention to the Caribbean, because it has been neglected in many ways. So we're hoping that with that feeling in Washington and our lobbying efforts, that we might be able to get the Caribbean Basin Trade Initiative expanded to the services under the administration of Barack Obama. Just to give you a perfect idea of what might happen, there is a trade agreement between the U.S. and Uruguay, which includes services. And in the 3 or 4 years since it was begun there, the services sectors, their economic growth has gone from 2% to 6% in just 3 or 4 years, which is quite an example of what we hope could happen in Jamaica and the Caribbean through our projects. It is our hope that our initiative may find its way into the discussions today and tomorrow, which will take place between President Obama and the CARICOM heads of state. And in fact, we drafted a one-pager, which we hope does get into the agenda, and that would be a terrific boost for us. With that, I'd like to thank you for your attention and would be happy to entertain any other questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Becky. Really great insight. And we've had a lot of people joining and sending in different questions. One of the things I want to say, the next person we have in line is Claude Duncan from Jamaica. And a lot of the questions we've been getting in are related to these hotel strategies. We're interested in learning more about this. People also want to know more about trade in Jamaica. So this is a man that actually has the answers to these questions. I'm really looking forward to his joining us in presentation. What we're going to see is a lot of the questions we've got in, they're going to be answered in Claude's presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to Claude right now. Make sure that you take notes during this one because he's going to give us the how. He's going to explain us what our next step is. Go ahead, Claude.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. As Melissa said, my name is Claude Duncan, and I am the Vice President of Investment Promotion here at JAMPRO. So to quickly put into perspective who we are at JAMPRO, we are the Economic Development Agency. So we are your main point of contact as you consider an investment in Jamaica. So basically our purpose, as noted on the slide, is we assist investors in coming into the country. And that process starts the minute you decide to look at Jamaica. So as you go through your due diligence and you have questions regarding the business climate, incentives, regulations, we are the agency that are in the best position to respond and provide responses or set up meetings with different entities that you may want to meet with regarding your investment in Jamaica. After the due diligence process, when you do decide to invest, we are the agency that would hold your hand in the onboarding process, helping you to find land, buildings, business partners, etc., etc. Next slide. So what I'm going to do quickly is give a perspective on why Jamaica is a great place to invest. You've heard the economic indicators presented by Jason. You have heard the perspective of an American who is now resident here and has the view of the American Chamber of Commerce. And what I'll do very quickly is just go through a couple of slides that puts into perspective the reason why, kind of encapsulate all that was said. So if you look at Jamaica, some key facts to note, we're a population of 2.83 million people. The list goes through a number of things there, but one of the things that stands out for investors is the last bullet, which is the fact that we are a very stable democracy. We have free and clear elections every 5 years, and that investors find to be very important as they look at investment, which, as you know, you're not looking at short term, but you're looking at long term. Next slide. In terms of business climate, Jamaica has a very liberal and welcoming business climate. Some of the key things there are zero restrictions on foreign ownership of land, for example. So, of course, investors coming in, there are no restrictions on repatriation of profits, etc. As Becky said during her presentation, not only do we welcome people from a broad cultural and national standpoint, but if you look at the actual regulations and rules around business in Jamaica, it is also welcoming to foreigners. Next slide. In terms of infrastructure, in Jason's presentation, he showed a pipeline of projects, and what this says is Jamaica has continued to invest heavily in infrastructure. And as you know, a solid infrastructure provides the platform for just about everything else. So if you look at the infrastructure investment in our road network, in our ports, in our airports, what we're doing is setting the stage for growing in a number of sectors, which I will talk to in a second. Next slide. Apart from that infrastructure, there is the actual, and I singled out the telecoms infrastructure because it needs to be singled out, because in this electronic and telecom advanced world that we live in, you know, I think in some ways you're only as good as your IT and telecoms infrastructure. And on that count, Jamaica stands head and shoulders with any developed country in terms of infrastructure. In a lot of the major towns and cities, there is fiber running to the homes and most business places. And what you can pay for circuits are probably lower than most developed countries. So very, very good infrastructure. One of the key points about our infrastructure is that in terms of links that connect Jamaica to the rest of the world, we have about 5 subsea fiber cables. So what that means is that the connectivity between Jamaica and the outside world is almost guaranteed. Next slide. In terms of workforce, you know, Jamaica has a very educated and cost-competitive workforce. If, in the quick facts slide, it showed that we have a literacy rate of about 81%. You have a number of universities, both local and foreign. We graduate about 7,500 new professionals every year, and you know, quite a few thousand in terms of high school graduates. A very sophisticated educational infrastructure, and we provide training at all levels. So whether high school, vocational, tertiary, etc., etc. Next slide. There's what we're doing at the tertiary level, and just as important, or even more important, is what we're doing to guarantee a competitive labor market in the future. And one such major initiative has been the e-learning project, which the Jamaican government has rolled out, which in last year alone, they handed out over 30,000 tablet computers to children in the secondary school system. The e-learning project is a project where they're basically implementing technology in schools across the island to ensure that the generation that's coming up is totally comfortable around the use of technology. Next slide. And then there is, you know, Jamaica being a great place to play, work, and live. Obviously, as an investor, it's not necessarily about investing and forgetting, but a lot of times you want to visit or reside in the country in which you are making that investment. And in that regard, Jamaica remains a great place to play, work, and live. You know, recently National Geographic, which if you think about them, they have an audience of 32 million people. They published a publication that rated Jamaica's Devon House ice cream as the 4th best place in the world to eat ice cream. So that's just a little tidbit for anybody on this call who, when you do come to Jamaica, be sure to contact us, and I will personally carry you to Devon House to have that ice cream. Next slide. This slide kind of summarizes what has been discussed in a lot of the reports. And we liken it to a stock market where, you know, if you look at the recession in 2008, IBM stock was trading at $83. Today, IBM stock is trading at $162. And the reason for that is, you know, when the recession hits, obviously people got scared, but they kind of forgot about fundamentals, which is, you know, does the company have an ability to give a huge return? Is there sound management around the company, and does the company provide unique competitive advantages? I think on this slide, it summarizes that one of the things we're seeing is sound management of the Jamaican economy. So that sound management puts Jamaica in a perfect position to give investors a huge return over the next couple of years. Next slide. In terms of landscape, if you don't know, this kind of gives a very quick snapshot of companies that are resident in Jamaica, just a few of the multinationals. And just wanted to give a perspective of the companies across nationalities that are here. So you have a company like CEMEX, which is, here you go, CEMEX, which is out of Mexico. You have Campari out of Italy. You have Campari out of Italy, ZTE out of China. You have Total out of France. You have Ericsson out of Sweden. So a number of multinationals, a whole host. And this is just a small list because obviously there's the tourism brands, there's the outsourcing companies, which I'll get into now. Next slide. So with that backdrop, I'm going to just summarize very quickly each of the main areas of investment. So the first one is in the area of logistics. And what that is with the deepening of, or the new Panama Canal that is going to be open, and the movement of post-Panama ships, it puts Jamaica in the perfect position to grow in logistics in the region. So right now, Jamaica is the #1 transshipment port in the Caribbean, and we're looking to raise the profile and do a lot more of certainly more transshipment, but also more logistics. So having companies use Jamaica as a manufacturing hub for the region, having Jamaica used as a location to package, relabel, etc. So a number of logistics opportunities, both on the infrastructure side as well as the business operation side. So using Jamaica to be one hub in your cold chain logistics service in the region. Next slide. In terms of business process outsourcing, Jamaica continues to do very well in this space. Currently, we have about 17,000 people in the sector. This is a snapshot of some of the companies operating in Jamaica. So down here, we're showing you have a company like Xerox, which Xerox has close to 7,000 people in Jamaica doing work for the likes of Blue Cross, Amazon, AT&T. You have a company like Vistaprint. If you know Vistaprint, they recently built a 92,000 square foot facility here in Jamaica. All their English language support is done out of Jamaica. You have Hinduja Global, who is doing work for Humana here in Jamaica. You have Sutherland, who is doing work for Microsoft, Netflix. So a real growing business process outsourcing location. I think one of the proudest moments for us, next slide, was when we were at a Gartner conference, and Gartner is the leading advisory firm in the technology space. And they put up this chart. So the chart you're seeing here is the exact copy of the chart they put up at the conference. And if you notice, there is Jamaica being listed as a location for process expertise in finance and accounting. So when you get recognized by a firm as significant as Gartner in the business process outsourcing world, it shows that you're on the right track and that there's tremendous potential. The things that gives us some unique advantages in this space, being the third largest English-speaking country in the Americas, educated and cost-competitive workforce, and a very robust telecoms infrastructure. Next slide. In terms of tourism, we continue to be a great destination for investment in tourism. And if I were to sum it up in a few words, if you look at Brand Jamaica, and Brand Jamaica here speaks to the recognition of the name Jamaica. And because of our exploits in sports, in cuisine, in culture, what it translates to is a visitor appeal. So people want to come to Jamaica. If we look in the last year, we have had over $200 million worth of investment in the tourism space, with companies like Moon Palace out of Mexico doing over $100 million worth of investment in a new hotel. Companies like Playa, who has brought Hyatt to Jamaica. Companies like Charisma out of Mexico. And we continue to attract very good investments in tourism, and there's room. There are a number of ideal locations for investment. Greenfield projects where even us as Jamper have a laundry list of hotel brands who are looking for partners to work with to develop properties in Jamaica. In terms of opportunities for investment, we're looking to diversify. So right now, we're very prominent in leisure tourism. But as Becky has pointed out, there's room for health tourism. And we actually have a Spanish chain building a hospital in Montego Bay as we speak. We have a number of health tourism projects on the drawing board. So there's opportunity in health tourism. There's opportunity in ecotourism. There's opportunity in tourism attractions. So a range of hotel or tourism opportunities in Jamaica. Next slide. In the area of agriculture, one of the key things in terms of agriculture, obviously being a tropical climate, we're ideal for agriculture investment. And the government has been putting in the infrastructure with agri-parks and identifying land for large-scale cultivation. The tremendous opportunity here is that Jamaica has a population of 2.7 million people, but we also have 3 million tourists coming to Jamaica every year. So you have a market of 6 million people for agricultural produce. So if you look at the tourism sector alone, they import a lot of the produce, which we could grow locally, but we don't have a history of large-scale cultivation. So there are a number of opportunities in that space. Then we have over 3,000 ships that touch Jamaica every year in terms of cargo ships, between cargo ships and cruise ships, which provides an opportunity for provisioning, meaning these ships stock up on water, meat, produce, etc. And currently, Jamaica isn't one of the locations that they use for provisioning because we do not have the volume of production for that. So there's opportunity for beef, cattle farming to produce beef, for example, to service these markets. So a huge set of opportunities around agriculture. Next slide. And then there's mining. A lot of people know Jamaica for bauxite. However, we actually have more limestone than we have bauxite as a country, and we actually have pharmaceutical-grade limestone. So there's the opportunity to develop industry around limestone for toothpaste manufacturing of auto parts, limestone is used in calcium supplements, is used in pharmaceuticals. So we have a whole range of opportunities around whether it be export, mining for export, or preferably, which is where we're looking to develop opportunities, is around the value-added production related to limestone. Next slide. So that's it in a nutshell. So the main points I want to leave you with is that, one, Jamper is the agency that you would work with to develop the opportunity that you're looking at in Jamaica. And we would help you from due diligence all the way through implementation. And as you look at Jamaica, there are three things to bear in mind. One, what you're seeing in recent times is very sound management of our economy and our infrastructure. Two, we provide a number of unique competitive advantages, and that varies by sector. So the key thing is to understand what's your sector of interest, and we can, do a deeper dive regarding why Jamaica provides unique competitive advantages in your sector of interest. And three is that Jamaica has the ability to give you a very good or huge return on your investment. And that investment, by the way, is very easy to get out as there are no restrictions on repatriation of profits or in moving dollars out of Jamaica. So with that said, this is our contact information, and I'll hand over back to Melissa for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claude. And now we get to turn the rest of the session over to people connected around the world. We've had a lot of questions coming in, and we're going to try and get to as many of them as we can. If you have not done so, please send your questions now through the chat section, and it's on the right side of your screen. And the first question that we would like to ask the panel to address today is directed to Claude. Claude, could you please tell us what about Jamaica makes it a great place for Latin Americans to invest?
I think there are a range of reasons. I myself have been to Brazil, I've been to Argentina, I've been to Costa Rica, and in each of these cases, what you find is that a lot of these Latin American countries have expertise that Jamaica could certainly benefit from. And in some cases, Jamaica has expertise that the Latin American countries could benefit from. So if you take, I mentioned beef production, for example. If you look at Brazil, and you look at Argentina, and probably other countries within Latin America, there's an opportunity for persons in the agribusiness space to look at Jamaica as a platform to do investment in these areas to benefit from markets that we have access to. So I mentioned the provisioning of ships, for example. These ships that touch Jamaica, over 3,000 of them every year, why are they not buying beef, or stocking up on meat in Jamaica? Is because we don't have a robust industry around cattle production. If I look at outsourcing, there are firms in Latin America that are significant providers of business process outsourcing. There's an opportunity for them to partner with Jamaican firms to provide the English language support component of contracts that they are winning. So they may have a contract where the requirement is for 80% Spanish speaking and 20% English speaking. There may be the opportunity for those firms to partner with a firm in Jamaica to provide, the English language component of that contract. So I think as you go industry by industry, there are a range of opportunities that fit naturally with the resources and capabilities that exist in Latin America.
Thank you, Claude. The next question I have here is for Jason. Jason, from which areas are the greatest tax revenues generated? From the business sector or from the taxpayers?
Actually, the business sector, the performance of tax collections on the business sector is actually quite muted. In fact, it's actually declining year over year. So general consumption tax would be the biggest area, which is an ad valorem tax, and that is paid by everyone.
Thank you. One of the things that we've gotten a lot of questions around is the hotel construction projects. And I know Jason showed them on his presentation. Becky named a few as well, and Claude also said a few. So the questions that we're getting, first, when are these construction projects planned? The ones that are on Jason's slide, maybe I'd like to ask you, Jason, to touch on that first. And then which are the chains that are already present? And, Becky, I think you could give us some information on that. And, I think that people are really looking at harnessing the complete opportunity as well. So after the two of you speak, I'd like to ask Claude to tell us a little bit about how companies from outside of Jamaica can tap into servicing or doing business with those tourism construction projects that are going to happen. Thank you.
Well, in terms of construction projects, so on the infrastructure side, we have a number of roadworks that are in train as we speak. As I said before, the North-South Highway link, that's actually ongoing. They actually opened one section of road last quarter, I think, and they have the final section to open sometime this year. But that project in of itself will finish first or second quarter of 2016. As far as the Kingston Container Terminal goes, the privatization of that, the contract to privatize it was signed yesterday. As far as the timeline to finish that, I guess it may take a year or two. As for the privatization of the Norman Manley International Airport, they are currently seeking someone to actually take up that contract, and hopefully they'll actually get that privatization contract done by, say, the first quarter of next year, and then obviously it would take that investor some time to actually, execute the changes that they will make. The logistics part, or the logistics hub initiative, the dry dock facility, the air cargo facility, these are mainly in the developing stage. So a lot of work and feasibility studies is currently going on. So we're not sure when the completion timeline for those will be. So those will more likely be maybe 3-4 year projects.
Thank you. Becky, could you comment to us a little bit about, which are the hotel chains that are present, any new investments that you're seeing in the hotel pipeline? And, another question that we've had come in several times for you, Becky, too, is companies that are not from the U.S., how can AmCham help them get into the Jamaica market?
Okay, as far as the hotel chains, we have Rio, the Spanish hotel, has at least 7 hotels in Jamaica. The Grand Palladium, which is already here, I understand is expanding their rooms in a big way. Interestingly, in Kingston, we now have the first Marriott Court Hotel, which is about to open. Of course, we have the Sandals Hotel chain, which everybody is aware of. So we have a lot of great hotels, and it's very exciting to see all of these new players that are coming into the market. Now, as far as AmCham is here to help in any way that we can. Sometimes there are people who, for instance, have some concerns about security issues, which we hear sometimes. And in fact, I get calls quite often from American companies who seem afraid to send their staff here for marketing. And it's funny because every time that people come to Jamaica and that I've had contact with them, the international press and the way they report our crime really gives, a much worse picture than what we have here. In Kingston, for instance, the crime rate and the homicides are in the inner city communities. And just like Akron, Ohio has places you don't go, New York has places you don't go, all of these things you don't have to worry about. I've been here for 34 years and I've never had a bad experience. So that's one way that I often help JAMPRO and the ministry when they have people who are interested in investment and they hear these statistics, it frightens them. And amazingly, every time there's been a business visitor in Jamaica and they get here, they see that all of the concerns that they had really don't exist. It's not going to have any impact on their lives. So I'm always addressing issues like that. We're a great networking organization. It's very important to us. We work closely with the U.S. Embassy on trade missions coming in and going out. We can always put people in touch with accountants and lawyers and people who answer their questions. So what we do at AmCham is that we try to solve any business issues that might come along, help companies who want to come in meet companies that they could do business with, which is very important. So that's the kind of thing that we do at AmCham. We do whatever we can to help foreign investors or people who want to do business. And we really have been getting a lot of interest. There have been several companies, and the embassy has handed over to several American companies who are considering doing business in Jamaica. So I think that it's really exciting to have not only the accolades that we've had in the international press, but also the local business confidence survey was very, very important. Because for a while we didn't have a lot of business confidence in the locals, but now that has all changed. And it's exciting to be in Jamaica now to see all of the potential things that are going to be coming our way. And there's so much to offer in Jamaica.
Thank you, Becky. Claude, I'm going to give the next question to you. And people have been asking specifically, there's these big projects, large-scale projects. Are these materials that are going to be used for the construction of these projects, are they produced locally? Are they imported? You know, where is the steel coming from, cement? Right? People are looking at these opportunities as an opportunity not only necessarily to invest in Jamaica, but also to promote their products and services potentially in Jamaica. How do they reach customers in Jamaica, and you know, how can JamPro step in and be part of that?
All right. Thanks, Melissa. So firstly, in terms of raw materials for the projects, we do have a cement company here in Jamaica. So in terms of cement, most of that will be procured locally, although there is a significant amount of cement that is, in fact, imported. So there are large players in this cement space. One such company being Tankwell. So that's the name of our company. We could introduce anybody who is in the cement business. So in terms of steel, that's imported. Obviously, Jamaica has no steel mills here. So there are large players that do the importation of those construction materials. In terms of the tourism sector, as they look to outfit rooms in terms of furniture, some of that is made locally, some is imported. A lot of the hotel brands, just to add to what Becky had said, if you look at the tourism sector, there's a mix of Spanish hotels. There's a huge block of Spanish hotels. In the last couple of years, Jamaica has had over $1 billion worth of investment in Spanish from the Spanish chains. So you have Rio, you have Bahia Principe, you have Secrets, you have the Cameron, just to name a few. A lot of those Spanish chain hotels have their supply chains. I know a lot of times they deal with suppliers in the Dominican Republic, et cetera, So there are a number of chains which certainly we can furnish, the list, and those people can try and get in contact with those hotels about providing products and services. For other large infrastructure projects, again, those are being undertaken by contractors. So like a China Harbor, obviously they would have their procurement people supplying goods from all over the world as required to implement projects. So, from an infrastructure standpoint, the main input that would be locally would be cement. Everything around the cement, the sand, the stones. But when you get into steel, actually Jamaica produces paint as well, so that would be secured locally. But certainly in that construction, in construction and infrastructure projects, there would be quite a bit of material that is in fact imported.
Claude, we have one last question that I'd like to ask, and it's directed to you. And I think it really is important for all of those that use the Connect Americas platform, because what they're asking here is, I want to find a distributor in Jamaica for my product, but I don't know where to start looking for one. Could you give me some advice? Could you please speak to that, Claude?
Yeah, I think the main thing there is a good way to work would be through the Chamber of Commerces. So you do have a Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, which, as you know, would be linked to the different Chamber of Commerces all over the globe. So that's a very good channel to meet like-minded business people who, obviously looking for partnerships. So their mandate would be different from ours, because obviously our mandate is, focusing on export of products out of Jamaica or bringing investments in. Whereas the chambers are business persons looking for the next opportunity. So I think a good channel to connect would be through the Chamber of Commerces, or there are other associations. So in Jamaica, there's also a private sector organization of Jamaica, PSOJ, which is, again, an association of business persons. So those would be two very good resources to connect with in trying to understand or trying to find potential partners to act as distribution partners for your products coming out of the region.
I'd just like to add that is something that AmCham does on a regular basis, and we serve not only Americans, but all companies who are looking for a business partner in Jamaica. We do a lot of matchmaking appointments. That is something that we specialize in, so we would be happy to help at AmCham.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Claude. We are going to wrap up. Contact information is something we've gotten some questions on, so I just wanted to speak to that. The contact information will be available in the video. This session has been recorded, and it will also be available on ConnectAmericas.com. Okay, so if you want to reach out to Claude, if you need to reach out to Becky, Jason, you will have the information to be able to do that. I'm also available as well, and I think that Alejandro is going to take it back and wrap it up at this point. So thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to doing business with you in Jamaica.
Okay, Melissa, thank you so much. On behalf of Connect Americas, I also want to thank our special guest speakers. We appreciate you for taking the time and effort to participate in this webinar and for sharing your ideas and expertise with us. To our audience, thank you so much for joining us today. I would like to remind you as well that you will have access to the webinar recording on ConnectAmericas.com. So in case you have missed any detail or require contact information. So please stay updated with the latest news on ConnectAmericas.com. We will soon share with you information about our upcoming webinars as well. Thank you very much, and until next time.